Hello everyone, Kenty Tiger here with Bengali Engineering and Play. We are back in Space Engineers. We're continuing on in the construction of the Battleship. So one of the things, well, bunch of things that I did. This was another one of those. Well, I'll just do these couple things off screen, and it ended up being about 20 things. So reviewing here, one of the things is from a certain perspective, this is actually a pretty large hangar bay. From another perspective, it's like, okay, what am I gonna do with this here? So one of the things I was thinking is, okay, I'll have a hangar bay, but I built this fighter here, and what am I gonna do with it? So I think I just decided I'm gonna create a mount point on both sides, and we'll put a couple of them in here. So that's kind of what we did. So there's a connector under here, which you can see, and so I changed this rib just a little bit to give a actual landing pad point. So a point onto which the landing gear could actually connect, and then I put another one here and another one here. So this can either connect with the connector, and that is it, or it can actually link on, and then not actually connect, which isn't a bad thing. I also changed the fighter toolbar, at least on the pilot's menu, to include a way to shut everything down. Just turn it all off. So, whoops. Not sure why those are still on. That is strange because nothing else is on. Alright, so huh. Those are either not in a group, or something messed up. I'm guessing these are not in a group, which okay, I'm gonna note that. So one of the things I did was separate groups out from forward to aft, and I always have, when I build anything that's going to connect on with a connector, and this is, obviously everybody who builds has different methodologies. My methodology is I put all the thrusters in. When I finish everything, then I actually delete thrusters in key positions in all 6 directions, and depending on how many thrusters I want to use. So in this case, it's 2 thrusters in every direction, and I typically do small thrusters because the large thrusters have a completely different dynamic. Obviously, a lot more powerful. So I build all the thrusters, I delete 2 in every direction, and then of course, once I have all the thrusters, I'm going to back up here a step. Once I have all the thrusters, I create a group called thruster main, and that's pretty much all the thrusters. And the idea there is that once I'm done, I can actually use that to turn on and off the thrusters. Now, before or after I create that group, it doesn't even matter when. Once the group is created, then I delete thrusters, and then those thrusters, of course, are automatically deleted from the group because they don't exist anymore. Then I put the thrusters back in exactly where I took them out, and then I will have 6, 12, whatever number of thrusters, and those are my maneuvering thrusters. And so I take those thrusters, I might name them, or I might just put them in a group and call that thrusters maneuvering. And then when I shut off mains, I will have the maneuvering thrusters left on because they're a completely separate group. So that's just my way of doing it. So to recap, I build all the thrusters in a vessel, create a group, put all the thrusters into it. Then I delete select thrusters in all 6 directions, whether it be 1, 2, 5, however many, depending upon the size of the vessel. Delete them. Then recreate them. And in the process of recreating them, you'll now have these 6 or 12 thrusters that are not in a group. They're just sitting in your inventory again, your control panel again. You group all those together in thrusters maneuvering, and when you group them, take them off the terminal or whatever. Now you have your mains, which is your all of your thrusters, and then you have a group that's just maneuvering thrusters. So when you turn off your mains, you have a maneuvering thruster group. So your vessels, whatever they happen to be, are much more controllable by using this thruster group, and you can link up, you can land, you can connect onto a connector much easier. You have a lot more fine point control than you do just using all of your thrusters. So anyway, thoughts. So I'm gonna have to redo the groups. Obviously something screwed up because I've got those 2 thrusters forward that are doing weird things. So I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I used Sectan's airtight hangar doors, which is pretty broad. It goes from 3 to 32 in height. Obviously, I needed a 3 and a 4 to cover this 7 gap here. So this side happens to be the 4, and this side happens to be the 3. It was random whether I did port or starboard, as the 4 or the 3. Anyway, plumbed these 2 side ones here into the floor, across the floor, and then I created these 3 connectors in the center of the hangar bay to give some flexibility. Obviously, when you have a hangar bay, you're putting something in there, so you need a way to refuel it, put ice in it, whatever you're gonna actually do. Let me zoom in here. One of the other things I did is put M Masters. Whoa, things really changed here. M Masters LCDs 2, and there were changes, and I don't know what brought about the changes. I don't know if there was a script update at some point, but it changed a lot of stuff. So the display is much different. This one went totally out of whack as far as gas generator. There we go. So we have 6 gas generators. Um, a lot of things changed. So it used to give you, oh, it does again. Okay, never mind. I was gonna complain because this was no longer giving me the ratio, which I want. All right, so this is going to be 0.55. We have the large gates and the doors. Door status. We have cargo, which, because I'm using Kenti containers, is kind of silly. Interestingly enough, oxygen tanks, it's the total capacity of all tanks. And because I could technically do it in groups, and why not? Let's do that. So we have this group called tanks oxygen, and one of the things I did, so let's go ahead and bring that out, and then we'll go ahead and go down here and look at the tanks. So I have these two sorry, let me go ahead and re-highlight the tanks, which will highlight everything in the tanks. And what we're going to do is take the depressurization tanks out of the tanks group. And then we'll turn those off again. And then we will create a tanks hangar depressurize, and then we can turn those off. Alright, so we shouldn't have any tanks. Nope, all the tanks are gone. So now we have tanks hangar depressurize and tanks oxygen. So what we're going to do here is in custom data, which is where you actually put all the information for the LCD panels. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, if an LCD panel is to use MMaster's automatic LCD2 script, then you just put this designator in it, bracket LCD bracket. And then you put the information that you want it to display on the in the custom data. So in this case, what we're going to do is brace group tanks oxygen bracket. And so what I'm hoping here, it may not work this way, but it should just consider the contents of the tanks within this group. And if that's true, then this will go to 100%. And we'll see if it actually does that or not. Tanks, star, hydrogen. Alright, so it doesn't actually... Oh, okay. This is me. This is me. Oxygen. There we go. Okay. I forgot, I designated the group, and because the group's name was oxygen, I just totally spaced and didn't pay attention. So what this now is the hydrogen tanks for everything, and it doesn't actually give a quantity, it just says a percentage, which is fine. and then the oxygen tanks now, which are just a percentage of the active group. So this my actual storage tanks. So the tanks are no longer using the no longer accounting for these pressurization tanks, or depressurization tanks rather. Now, one of the things I didn't do was put in a timer to make everything work. So in this case, you have to turn off the ventilation systems. You have to turn on the depressurization system, and once it's done, then you open the bay doors. So there's a button bar here and a button bar at the front, and what it was is depressurization on off, and cargo doors open, and then the build and repair system on off. And what I really should do, which I guess we'll go ahead and do, okay, so let's go back into groups. Hangar doors, hangar main, we'll shift this to here, which is an open close. We want the hangar depressurization, depressurize on and off, and then we're actually going to have to create another group here, so we'll go ahead and do that, which is a K. We'll go into just air vents, and so we have the fighter bay here, and we have the hangar bay, which is 8 of these. So these are still going to be in the all vents, so the air vent group, but we're going to create a special group called air vents hangar main, or just hangar. And the reason we're going to do that is we want to be able to affect these individually, which is really to say turn them on and off. Obviously, if you're trying to depressurize at the same time you have another group of vents that are pressurizing, you're just going to fill up the depressurization tanks, and that's the end of it. So in this case, what we want to be able to do is to grab this group. So we have air vents, which is everything. We have the hangar vents, which are the supply vents. We want to be able to toggle those on and off. So these are hopefully never going to be on or off at the same time. So what I could do, in fact I probably should do, is in fact let's go ahead just for fun, we want 8, and we'll grab a timer if I can find a time. There's a timer. Oh, definitely not that color. I was doing some grinding, which we'll show here in a bit. There we go. Okay, I don't need to, but I'm going to go ahead and put them in just so everything looks symmetrical. I know that's a total OCD thing, but... Alright, so timer block 2, we need to go ahead and make sure everything on the grid is owned by me. So we're going to turn everything else off because we've recreated these groups. We'll go to timer block, and this is oh, whoops, sorry, that was not what I wanted to do. Hanger D. Hanger depressurize. We're going to set this at 1, mostly because we're not really using timers now. I did a extensive, I'll call it, hangar bay depressurization coordination thing. It uses 6 different timers to do everything. You push a single button for open and a single button for close, and boom, it does what it does. And it controls lights, it controls alarms, it controls the depressurization, times it all, opens the doors, blah blah blah. On and on it goes. This is going to be a really simple version. I'm using a timer effectively to toggle. So you trigger it and it toggles. You trigger it again and it toggles the other way. So effectively what we're going to do here is toggle the 2 depressurization either on or off. And so setup actions here. We want to do 2 things in this case. Groups. We're going to turn off the hanger vents, literally turn them off, toggle off, and in this case we're going to toggle depressurize. So these are toggle. So as long as one of them is off and the other one is on, they're just going to reverse back and forth. Now we could use 2 timers to do this, an on and an off. Certainly nothing wrong with that. Depressurize on, depressurize off. Nothing wrong with that. The difference here is that we're really just going back and forth on 2 different functions, so there's 1 button. So I kind of like the 1 button idea. It basically uses the timer to trigger, and then in this case the other timer is a spare. So we'll just call that spare. And the spare in this case is off the toolbar, the other one is on the toolbar, and then I created this system of computers and displays, so we're going to put it in there. And we're not going to touch this one because that would default everything, and I don't want to do that. So and our 2 timers should have gone off. So I'm still working on the bridge LCD panels, so we'll tour the bridge here. I again did a lot of things off screen, many more than I had actually intended to do. All right, so let's go ahead and look here again at what's going on. So we're gonna remove, and remove groups. So in this case, timer block, we're going to trigger now. Okay, so even if there was a timer set, trigger now will bypass the timer. So whatever you have set up in the, so a timer, what does a timer do? It delays a certain period of time, which you can set, and then triggers. And what I mean by triggers is now it will go through the list of the setup items and execute them. Okay, so starts the timer, runs to the end. When the timer expires, it executes everything in the bar. In this case, we just triggered now, so I'm not going to wait the second. It's just going to trigger. So depressurize, it turns the other things off. When you trigger it again, then it will reverse and then light everything off. So the downside to this is that let's theorize here. We have four we have four air vents down here. We have four air vents down here. These are the main supply to the ventilation system. These four are the pull-ins. So we will fill twice as fast as we can pressurize and depressurize. So having said that, the timer functionality here is a little bit of a misnomer. So when we depressurize, it actually will work perfectly. When we repressurize, then this will go into pressurized mode, and these guys are already in pressurized mode. So this is really not going to work well. We really do need our 6 timer mechanism for this to work well. Having said that, we're going to leave it for now, mostly just to get things working, and then if I feel like it, I can come back later and we will fine-tune and improve things. So one of the things we see we need to change this to a 0.55, which will then get everything back up to where it was. Something happened. There we go. And we're going to copy what we have in here to the other one. So Control A, Control C, and then we'll put that into this display so it works correctly. So here again, a Control A, this time a Control V, which is a paste, which is this updated piece, and then this should correct itself. Yep. So this is now the storage tanks, not the depressurization tanks. Alright, so having said that, we have all this display of everything. We have all our power here, all of our reactors, including the small reactors. We have the gas generation systems. We have all the different connectors around the ship. Okay, this is going to screw up again, but oh, I did change this pretty dramatically. Because I added this gas generator status. And all right, so let's go ahead and there's 2 more connectors here, and the reason those 2 connectors are not showing up is because everything on that display is coming from a group. Just to verify, everything is in there. So if I go up here to my connectors group, I don't want to turn it off on the toolbar because I want to be able to access all of these guys on the toolbar. I'm going to save, which now added those into the group, and then I'm going to turn them off on the terminal. Now, here's what happens. These guys are going to be added in here. You're going to see them in a minute. There we go. They just popped in there, and oh, it barely fit on the screen. So the script for these will actually scroll up and down. It's really cool. If you have more information on the screen than will fit, it will scroll. In this case, it's just about perfect. So I added some stuff. So that's a Control A and a Control C. And then we'll go to this monitor here. K, custom data, Control A, Control V to paste. And then this should update. Might take a second or two. Or more. There we go. And updated. So one of the things that I am finding a little bit frustrating with Izzy is this no blueprint is not always accurate. So the Mark I battery small shell, which is actually I pulled it in from one of the fighters. So let me demonstrate. So in production here, you have to know what you're looking for all the different shells. 88 millimeter. So the 88 millimeter shell is for the small ship Mark I batteries. So in this case, I want to create a certain number of those, and eventually Izzy figures out, oh, this is what the blueprint for these is, and once it does that, then it can figure out, so we're still at a no blueprint here, and sometimes it will eventually pick it up, and sometimes it won't. So it's really just a matter of I don't know. I truly don't understand exactly how it does what it does. Eventually it figures out that it has something, and then it's okay. So we have this one here as well. The Telion battery is the side mounted, so the Telion dual fixed mounted weapon, and it's a 420 millimeter. So if we were to go into production and look for the 420 millimeter right here, then potentially it would theoretically find that blueprint eventually, figure out what the blueprint is, and then do it. Okay, so the blueprint warning went away, which is good. I'm happy that it went away. The Kenti 25 millimeter, I have not correctly placed this in the game, and I don't know exactly what is left, but you can't actually. Let me demonstrate. So in this case, components, small blocks, large blocks. In this case, okay, the missiles are vanilla. The NATO magazine is vanilla, and the 25 millimeter is vanilla. So theoretically you should see another one here that's the Kenti, because there's actually several missiles. There's also 5.62 millimeter, and there's also 25 millimeter that's Kenti stuff. But because I have not put it into the game correctly, there is not an actual build mechanism for it, so you can't actually build it in the assembler. Because you can't build it in the assembler, then ISI can document it, but it can't build it. So that's one of the things about ISI here. So why is all this important? It's important from the perspective of this list right here. Is what you do to manipulate, and let me demonstrate. So we have let's fix the bulletproof glass, and then I'm going to come back to so bulletproof glass right here. So we'll set it for 500, and hopefully it will figure out in the course of 500 how to make these things. Bulletproof glass. So ISI is not updating here. So you can tell ISI is running because of the little spinny. So as long as that's spinning, then you know everything's good. But it has not updated the list. So something going on here. Auto crafting 1, auto crafting 2. ISI as an inventory manager does pretty good. It's a bit more simple to set up than some of the other inventory managers. I don't want to call it entirely intuitive, but it is a bit more simple in its methodology. So the neat thing about this is if you have supplies and you have assemblers, then it will auto queue. So this Q9 here is you set a base value. I want to maintain this number of blah, whatever it is. This happens to be the X3 magazine. So it will auto queue to move up to this level. Now you can have more, but it will move up to that level. So the idea is hand drill. So I don't know why bulletproof glass is not working. So if you T on this, then you'll bring up this list, and I'm going to cheat here a little bit. I'm using so MMasters has this default list here, and I don't know if this is I don't know where these numbers were derived, but they're pretty realistic for basic building. So what I've always figured is that if I program this in, then this will be my base for most anything I can do. And all right, so proof glass. Let's just look here. Bulletproof glass is 12,000. So what we're going to do here, oops, is a T. Bulletproof glass we're going to set as 12,000. Okay. So this will change, and then it says no blueprint. So the question is, what's happening to it all? So inventory, glass. I have 1260 glass, but it's not finding it for some reason. Yeah, so for whatever reason it is not identifying the glass. So what I'm gonna do here is so program block. I'm gonna go in here and edit. I'm gonna check code, and then remember, which basically is gonna reset everything. All right. So strangely enough, when I reset, then it identifies that they're there and then queues a boatload of them, which is nice. Canvas. Canvas is 30, so we'll go ahead and update. Canvas is 30. Computers, I have no idea, but you really need a whole boatload of computers, so... Oh, darn. Alright, so... 300,000 steel plate. Steel plate. 300,000. Small steel tube. Alright, so give me half a second here. I'm going to grab something. So I actually took a picture of this display panel. Just for the sake of this very evolution, so I could actually look and see what I needed to put in to this particular display. So computers is 6.5, but I'm going to leave it at 25,000 just because you go through a boatload of back in here. Proof glass canvas. Canvas I think was 300. Computer construction components 50,000. Detector is 400. Displays 500. Interior plate 55,000. beverage tube 6,000. Metal grid is 15,500. Mark 1. Mark 1 battery. That way I always have plenty of ammunition. Motors. Motor 16,000. Power cells. Power cell 2,800. Or 3,600 perhaps. Radio communication equipment is 250. Reactor components. Reactor components 10,000. I don't have any gravel, so those aren't going to happen. Small tube 26,000. So we figured this out. So, see, my guess is that the weapons are actually taking a boatload of these in. So as it queues them, it takes them in. So that I'm guessing that's a guess on my part. Okay, so we're gonna go okay. We should see a lot of change happen here. Hand drill. So, all right. I'm going to look back over at our list here. So girder. All right. So ISI has the capability of auto deconstruct. So you set a threshold. Let's say 50,000 girders. And if you do deconstruction on things, you take things apart, you grind them down, you throw them in inventory, and you end up with 51,427. So you're 1,427 over your quota. Then ISI can actually take those 1,427 and disassemble them in the assemblers automatically. So you always maintain your threshold exactly. So it's kind of, I think, a neat function. That's turned off right now, and it does take a little bit of CPU power to do that, because it's constantly going through and evaluating. Oh, I've got too many of these. Let's shift. All right. Oops. Did not get close enough. So what I'm doing here now, this list is dynamic, and it will actually spread out over both of these solar panel, or both of these LCD displays. That's why this one is actually empty right now. So there are, if we look, let's look at the component list. So this is the standard component list. So everything that you see that's a 0 is because I haven't created any. There isn't any in the inventory. So what I want to do is queue up a couple of these things. So production and so girders. Here's my girders. So let's go ahead and queue 1,000 girders. And the other thing I'm going to do is move this to the front. And hopefully Izzy will figure out, oh, I want to make girders and also put girders in the list. There's girder in the list. So as it figures out how to make everything, we want girder, and girder is 3500. So, sorry, T. Girder now is in the list here at 3500. And OK. And we will likely have to reset ISI again for this thing. So basically, as I do this, I'll go through and figure out what are zeros. So we have thrusters. I need 16,000 thrusters. So K to get in production and thrusters, which are here. We'll roll that to the front, which will hopefully create an inventory item. And then once we do that, okay, thrust showed up here. So we'll go into T. We'll roll down here to thrust, and this is now 16,000. And then we go to gravity generator, which we need 250, it says. So K, production, gravity generator, detector, gravity generator, gravity reactor components. There we go. So I think 250 of these, we'll move these to the front. So if all goes well, then we will add gravity generator in there somewhere. Gravity generator, there it is. We only need 250 of those. So T, gravity generator, now becomes 250. And medical components, we need 120 of those. Okay. Production, medical components, which are these. Bring this to the front. And we should see medical components if it's not already there. There we go, medical. So T, medical. Is 120. And I'm going to go ahead and reset ISI. So check code. Remember there, which updated everything. So there should only be the one that is no BP. Now the interesting thing about ISI is once you span, if you do a T, you'll only be manipulating what's on this display. You have to do a T down here and manipulate the other display. Alright, so thruster components. So explosives, we need 500 explosives. So okay, production, explosives. Throw this out in the front. There we go. So explosives should show up. There's explosives. And you see that one drop down to the next one. So X3, you'll notice, is no longer on this display. Explosives, we want 500. Solar panels 2800. Solar panels. And then move this to the front. See what else we got. Superconductors. Production. These are the superconductors. Move those to the front. Oh, that didn't like that. There we go. Alright, so solar panels 2800 and superconductors 3000. Solar cells and superconductor. So T, solar cell, 2600, right? And superconductor is, oops, 3000. All right, so I think we now have everything. I think. So let's go ahead and do another reset of ISI. Edit, check code. Okay, remember exit. And this should update. Yes, indeed it did. So the only one now is no blueprint for Kenti 25mm, which is exactly correct. All right, so other production that I always do is hydrogen bottles. How many hydrogen bottles you have is really completely up to you. I like having just 20 sitting in inventory, but you know, you may want more, 100. So 20 and 20. And I'm going to move those to the front and those to the front. So it's saying we're out of iron. Is that really possible? Nickel, iron. Yes, it is. I wouldn't have thought, but it is. So I got totally sidetracked here on inventory, but inventory being what it is. So let's continue the tour here. So I buttoned up everything on the outside of the ship, so it is completely airtight, as was intended. I renamed all the static batteries. So we have starboard side forward A and B, which are actually grouped together as starboard forward. Same thing is starboard aft A and B, and then of course on the other side we have the same thing. I've renamed these to aft A and aft B. So they can work. I actually did a lot of testing to see how things worked, and they worked reasonably well. I put the BRS display, there's one here forward. There's also another one here aft that tells what the BRS system is actually doing. Let's go ahead and go to the bridge. I'm going to do an F8 here to get in the bridge. We'll do a control and then so this is the bridge. I went ahead and put I like the Colt command consoles, so those are down. I added whips up here. So there's the pilot seat, which is here on this side, and then the navigator gunnery control on this side. So you can see that in both directions. Nothing to speak of in either one of these. This is the gunnery chair for the port side. So let me go ahead and I've done a little bit of configuration. So in this case, you have find my mouse. Where's my mouse? I have no mouse. There's the mouse. So we have the active and fire button. We have port forward and port aft. We have the sights for both of those, which are actually also the port side views. Then we have the starboard, forward and aft arrays. And the reason why I put all four of these on here, even though this is the starboard side, is that when you fire, everything that's on is going to go off. So in this case, if I were to toggle 6 and 7 off, so I've turned the starboard side weapons off. Let's go ahead and view so you can see what's going to happen here. So the starboard side weapons are off. All right, 1 active. So they go off, but the starboard side did not, and it's actually good because there's stuff over there. I would have just destroyed that thruster package over there. So the idea was you have complete control. So fire again. Complete control over the side you're using, even though you're on the other side. You can also turn on and off the weapons, which is to say the anti-fighter turrets and the anti-missile turrets are all controllable here. On your second is you can actually control directly all 4 of the large turrets. You can turn the large turrets on and off, so if you're not actually controlling one, they're going to function automatically. Now, these guys are very slow lumbering to come around, but when they get there, they're there. So they will do an awful lot of damage. I actually, it was probably about 2 or 3 minutes that I actually went through 20. I put a target up, and it went through about 20 layers of heavy armor. So with all 4 of these firing, you're going to punch holes in things very, very quickly. It went through the first layer on the first volley. So you've got 12 rounds, obviously, going through there, but so 12 rounds you punch through heavy armor in the first volley. So fun. Eventually, we will put this vessel up against other ships and find out how it actually does. Does it perform up to the level that I'm hoping it will? And we'll go from there. So anyway, so the idea here, sorry, OCD, got to get that back to the base. So we have gunnery chair, port and starboard, and then we have the pilot and the navigator. I kind of want to Alright, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna delete that. I'm gonna delete that too. Maybe I'll do that. Yeah, I think I will. Originally I was gonna put a slant here because structural. Because I was thinking the navigator okay, sorry, my structural engineering here will not allow me to do this quite this way. So 6. I'm actually not sure what's going to happen here. Alright, so let me look and see. Okay, so theoretically, I don't know if that'll still swivel. So I might have just created a problem here. Alright, I solved my structural engineering problem here, but I may have created another one at the same time. So what I want to do back here is create the same thing as we had here. So if I look here, this thing rotating around, just staring at it will hit. Now, I don't know what I need to do here. Technically, I can move this back one more. I will not be able to put the plate on here. So if that's the case, then we may end up with a couple little problems. So let us, for the sake of testing, let me do a Shift F5. In fact, I'm over the hour, so let me go ahead and break here, and we'll continue testing in the next round. So this is Kenty Tiger signing off. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time.